Hey gang, and welcome back. Just a reminder, you can now use the promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, at flipsidegaming.com. You'll get 10% off orders over $10 and help with the channel at the same time. We are back again with another EDH gameplay just for you guys. This week I'm playing my Titania deck, Kevin is playing his Gonti deck, Scott is playing his Neheb the Eternal deck, and Tim, who's new to the channel, is playing his Daretti deck. For openers, I keep Wooded Foothills, Natural Affinity, Beast Within, Mouth of Renome, Realms Uncharted, Life from the Loam, and a Snow-Covered Forest. Kevin's head had 2 Swamps, Reliquary Tower, Karn Liberated, Erebos God of the Dead, and Kakusho the Evening Star. Scott kept a hand with a Mountain, Fire Diamond, Mana Flare, Pyrohemia, Combustible Gearhulk, Reforge the Souls, and Furnace of Wrath. Lastly, Tim keeps a hand with 2 Mountains, Wayfarer's Bauble, Voltaic Key, Vidalcan Orrery, Steel Hellkite, and Vandal Blast. I win the die roll and start us off. For my first turn, I play a Wooded Foothills, cracking it to find a Snow-Covered Forest, and pass to Tim. Tim plays a Mountain, casts Mana Vault, then taps Mana Vault to cast Wayfarer's Bauble, and using the 2 remaining mana, cracks it to find a Mountain. Kevin plays a Swamp and passes turn. Scott plays a Mountain and passes to me. I play a Snow-Covered Forest and pass back to Tim. Tim takes 1 damage on his upkeep and plays a Mountain. He then casts Voltaic Key and untaps the Mana Vault. Then, using his remaining mana, Tim is able to cast Daretti on turn 2. Tim then upticks Daretti, pitching Steel Hellkite and Vidalcan Orrery, and draws 2 cards. Kevin plays a Swamp and passes turn. Scott plays a Mountain and casts Fire Diamond before passing to me. For my turn, I play a Snow-Covered Forest, then cast Soul Ring. Not feeling like I've ramped enough this turn, I follow up with a Kodama's Reach to put a Snow-Covered Forest into my hand and 1 into the battlefield. With nothing else, I pass to Tim. On Tim's upkeep, he takes another point of damage from the tap Mana Vault. Then, during his first main phase, Tim untaps the Mana Vault, then retaps it, floating 3 mana. He downticks Daretti, swapping the now tapped Mana Vault for a sparkly fresh Steel Hellkite, and then using the floating mana, casts Lightning Greaves and equips them onto the dragon. Tim then plays Urza's Tower and moves to combat. Steel Hellkite swings at me for 5, and Tim opts to pay 1 mana to destroy my Soul Ring. With nothing else, he passes to Kevin. Kevin plays a Swamp and passes to Scott. Scott plays a Mountain and then casts Mana Flare and reasserts that he's doing so just because he's friends with everybody. He then casts Grenzo, Havoc Razor, and passes to me. For my turn, I play a Snow-Covered Forest and cast Song of the Dryad on Tim's Daretti. This is to help mitigate the huge advantage Daretti is known for gaining by cheating things out of his graveyard. I'm still concerned about the Steel Hellkite, but Kevin promises me that if I kill the boots, we will just have to wait to see what happens. I choose to take Kevin at his word by casting Beast Within on Tim's Lightning Greaves. And, with nothing else, I pass to Tim. Tim plays a Mountain for his turn, and moving to combat, he swings the Beast token and Steel Hellkite at Scott. As Steel Hellkite has done damage, Tim is able to pay 2 mana to destroy Scott's Grenzo. During Tim's second main phase, he casts Arc-Bound Crusher and passes turn. At the end of turn, Kevin kills Tim's Hellkite with Hero's Downfall. Kevin plays Reliquary Tower for his turn and casts Gonti, targeting Tim. Kevin then pays 4 to cast Erebos God of the Dead, and passes to Scott. Scott casts Koth of the Hammer during his first main phase, and downticks the Walker to gain 3 red mana. He is then able to pay for the rest of Combustible Gearhulk, and chooses me to make the decision. Scott tries to justify my letting him draw 3 cards because he had cast Mana Flare, not just for himself, but to help us all out. I don't fully believe him, so I say bin the card, and Scott hits 3 lands, which deals 0 damage to me. With nothing else, Scott passes turn. For my turn, I play Mouth of Renome and pass. At the end of my turn, Kevin activates his ability and kicks my tripod. Tim plays Tomb of the Spirit Dragon and casts Dreamstone Hedron in his first main phase. This gives the Crusher a +1/+1 counter, which Tim remembers, but a little bit later. Tim then taps it, floating 3, and untaps it with his Voltaic Key. He then uses one of his lands and the floating mana to sacrifice it and draw 3 cards. Tim then casts Mind Stone, giving the Crusher another counter, and sacrifices it with the floating mana he still has, to draw a card. With nothing else, Tim passes turn. Kevin casts Charcoal Diamond during his first main phase, and follows up with a Grey Merchant of Asphodel. With Zombie entering the battlefield, Kevin gets to drain everyone for 5 and gains 15. With nothing else, he passes to Scott. On Scott's turn, he taps a Mountain to float 2 red, then uses Koth to untap it. He then taps it again, generating more mana, to cast Neheb, and in response I cast Realms Uncharted. I find Command Beacon, Glacial Chasm, Ghost Quarter, and Tectonic Edge, and I target Kevin. He makes 2 piles, and I take the one with Tectonic Edge and Glacial Chasm. While I'm searching, Scott follows up by casting Furnace of Wrath, and is happy when it resolves and moves to combat. A bit salty over me not giving him those lands, Scott swings the Combustible Gearhulk at me, dealing 12 damage. During his second main phase, Neheb triggers and gives Scott a whopping 12 red mana. He uses 5 of the mana to cast Reforge the Souls. Tim responds by tapping his Daretti, who is a forest, and a mountain to cast Dualcaster Mage. With 2 wheels on the stack, this forces us all to draw 7, then pitch the hand to draw another 7. Scott then casts Godo to find Sword of War and Peace, which he puts onto the battlefield. With nothing else, he passes to me. For my turn, I cast Summer Bloom, which allows me to play 4 lands this turn, and I drop 4 snow-covered forests. I then tap 3 to cast Titania, who brings back Command Beacon, and I then cast Nissa, Vital Force, and upticker to untap a land and make it a 5/5 elemental. I then tap the elemental land and some others to cast Squirrel Wrangler. Then, with nothing else, I pass to Tim. Tim plays a mountain during his first main phase and drops Darksteel Forge. This gives his Crusher another +1/+1 counter, and Tim then casts Mirror Battlesphere, which gives his Crusher another 5 counters. With an indestructible board full of creatures, Tim is happy to pass to Kevin. On Kevin's turn, he plays Nykthos and casts Stitch Together to bring back Razaketh the Foul-Blooded. He then taps Nykthos to generate 8 black mana. Kevin then chooses to sacrifice the Grey Merchant to Razaketh, losing 2 life to tutor for a card. Kevin then decides it's time to cast Nguruk's Wake, taking out the field except for his and Tim's creatures. Tim, to no surprise, is totally okay with this, and I get a 5/3 elemental as my elemental land dies at the same time as Titania. Kevin then uses this opportunity to cast the card he stole from Tim, and Rings of Brighthearth hit the field. With nothing else, he passes to Scott. For Scott's turn, he recasts Neheb, and then follows up with Lightning Greaves, and then equips them onto his general. Moving to combat, Scott promises to deal with Tim and Kevin's board if I let him hit me. With no real answers in my hand, I have no choice but to agree and take 8. Moving to his second main phase, Scott gains 8 red mana thanks to Neheb, which he is all too giddy to use to cast Heartless Hidetsugu. Scott moves the Greaves onto the Ogre and taps him, assuming he's killing the table. At this point, we all think the table is dead due to the interaction between Heartless and Furnace of Wrath, but Tim catches that Heartless rounds down, and since we're all at uneven numbers, we all end up with 1 health remaining. Dismayed at his combo not working as intended, Scott casts Gamble to find a way to hopefully take 2 people out in lieu of killing the entire table. Unfortunately, as Gamble is a fickle mistress, Scott hits Fall of the Titans, the card he'd tutor for with Gamble, and is forced to discard it. With nothing else, he has to pass to me. For my turn, I'm left in a position where I essentially can't kill anyone, but at least I can get some revenge on Scott. I cast Kamal Fist of Krosa, and moving to combat, swing my elemental to kill Scott. Unfortunately, this sets in stone the fact that Tim's gonna win, and as I pass to him, he moves straight to combat, and he attacks Kevin with the Mirror Battlesphere, killing him with the trigger, and swings enough tokens at me to take me out. Game review time. So this was a bit of a quicker game for the channel, albeit not as quick as some of my Krenko games. It was certainly interesting to sit at a table where there was no blue and no fear of having your stuff counterspelled, so people were able to drop threats whenever they wanted. Mana Flare certainly did a lot of work in Scott's deck, and it definitely ramped up the rest of our decks. I really liked how Neheb was able to generate so much mana, and cards that enable double strike or extra damage like Furnace of Wrath or Gratuitous Violence do a fantastic job in a Neheb deck. It's a shame Scott's combo wasn't able to win, but it was kind of out of nowhere, so it would have made the game a little bit too short in my opinion. Kevin's Gonti deck seemed to stall a little bit, and he drew a lot of lands, which unfortunately didn't amount to very much. Even the Rings of Brighthearth that he stole from Tim weren't going to help him too much, until he was able to get Razaketh onto the field. That being said, having now played against a Razaketh and seeing that instant speed tutoring at the cost of 2 life and a creature is incredibly powerful, I can see why people really are uncomfortable with this card. He is very powerful, but he does have a lot of restrictions, so I don't think he's all that broken. Tim's Daretti deck makes my Daretti deck look slow, and it's built around comboing off as fast and as hard as he can, so it was really interesting to see it kind of stall out and not have to be able to win through his typical combos. I do think the Song of the Dryad really took some of the wind out of his sails and slowed his deck down to a more manageable amount. This is another time where I played my Titania deck and kept an opener with Natural Affinity, and the deck let me down. The double wheel certainly didn't help me, but it did give me a graveyard full of lands, but unfortunately that didn't get me very far. I've recently added Inventor's Fair to the deck to try and experiment with it, because I feel like there's a lot of ways and a lot of artifacts in my deck, and it's a fantastic way to be able to find Zurin Orb should I need it. Please be sure to tune in every Monday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video, with a second video popping up sometime during the week. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta, or check me out on Twitch at twitch.tv/MTGMudsta. This video is brought to you in part by support from my Patreons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below or in the About section. As always, thank you guys for watching, and please be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more.